Hello and welcome back to the third rail. If you follow the channel, you'll probably remember a locomotive I presented back a few weeks ago. It's a BB15000 of the SNCF, model number 3321, which I received recently. It was in good cosmetic condition. Unfortunately, during the testing it performed rather poorly. Okay, needs a push. Yeah, I think there's a few issues here. So in this episode, as I cannot wait to get a few coaches I've had in the collection for a few years now out for a spin, we're going to have a closer look at this engine and see if I can fix it. So let's have a closer look. So we're moving back to the bench and I've got the locomotive out. We're going to take it out of its box and see what we've got to deal with. It's still a nice model. Right, as we saw last time, we've got everything with this locomotive. It's a full metal construction, it's quite a heavy model. So let's put this packaging to the side. Yeah, it still looks as good as it did last time. So I'm going to put it back on the track and give it another test to start with. So let's rail the engine and try and give it a bit of power to see what happens. And it's okay in that direction. Well, that's bizarre. Ah yes, that's the problem. It's still a bit jerky, so it goes in one direction or the other, but it sorts of cuts off randomly in short spells. So we need to have a look inside. Let's go back to the bench. Right, bear with me while I rearrange a few things for a few seconds. I think I'm going to grab a cloth before I start disassembling the locomotive. I don't want to damage the pantograph or anything else in the process. So to lift the body, we need to untighten or undo a screw in the center of the chassis. We need a flathead screwdriver for this. Pretty easy, as with most Märklin locomotives. Then we just turn the whole thing around, get the screw out, put it somewhere where it cannot be lost, and then it's just a matter of lifting the body, which should be coming straight up. Looking at the body again, there is nothing wrong with the top side. It's full metal, as I mentioned before, and we still have the conductive strips for the pantograph inside the housing. Brilliant. So let's have a closer look at the motor arrangement. And it's a pretty standard layout for an electric locomotive from Märklin in the era. So we have an electronic pre-reversing unit. It takes its power from the center pickup or the overhead, then distributes it to the mechanical reverser, which in turn distributes the current to one or the other winding that drives the motor. In the center of the chassis you've got a pretty rustic contraption, which is a little lever that allows you to switch from pickup via the center contact to pickup via the pantographs. So it's a pretty simple affair. We're going to set it back if I don't break anything, to operation using the pickup shoe for now. Right, let's have a look at the motor bogie first, because I think it does need some attention. So to do this, I'm going to have to lift the bogie off the chassis, and for that I need to remove the bogie dummy. So there's a little screw at the front for the coupling, which needs to be removed. There we go. So let me grab a pair of tweezers to fish the screw out. There we go. Okay. Then it's just a matter of lifting one side of the dummy and pushing it to the other to remove it. And then we have this little metal plate under the bogie. That is what is holding the bogie to the chassis, and we need to untighten the screw. And of course someone has been over tightening that thing. My God, that's really bad. I'm going to need another screwdriver with a bigger head bit. Right, this one doesn't look pretty, but I'm pretty sure it will do the job a bit better than the standard Märklin screwdriver. Let's give it a try. Yeah, that's it. It's coming loose. Perfect. Right, we are back in business. Let me put the screw to the side, lift the little plate, and it is full of congealed oil as well, which might have had something to do with this, with how hard it was to get the screw out. And it's the same story on the motor bogie itself, so I'm going to have to clean that up a bit later. Let's carry on with the removal of the motor bogie. So the little light bulb, which I'm touching with my screwdriver at the moment, is in the way. So it simply clips off the chassis, and then we are free to simply lift the motor bogie out or up. Then we can put everything on its side, ready for the next step. Let's move a bit closer so that we have a better look. There we go. I'm going to move the bogie. Here we are. We're ready to go. So I'm going to take the little cable for the lamp out of the way as well. It's currently going under the interference suppression capacitor at the top of the motor plate. I'm simply going to lift the motor plate, the capacitor, a tiny bit upwards so that I have enough clearance, and then I'll remove the cable. There we go. So I won't damage it this way, or I'm less likely to do this. Then we'll start by removing the motor brushes. Of course, with the camera between me and the motor bogie, things are slipping a bit. We're going to try this from the other side. I think, there we go, that's going to be easier. Perfect. So, first motor brush. It's full of oil, but it's still long enough. So I think I'm simply going to clean that one up and put it back in a bit later. No need to change it. It's still perfectly serviceable. So we'll do the same with the other motor brush. Come on. There are days where certain things which are very easy on the other occasions are a bit more difficult. There we go. We're in. Let's get that brush out. Same story, it's a bit dirty, but it's long enough and also perfectly serviceable, so I shall reuse that little thing a bit later once I've cleaned it up. So we're getting closer to the big reveal. Now we just need to remove the two screws holding the motor plate to the motor bogie. There we go, we're nearly there. And we're ready to lift the motor plate. Hooray! So we're gonna take the plate and the winding out of the way. We're gonna start by having a look at the motor armature, which is, or the collectors on the motor armature, which are filthy. And as you can see, the collectors are completely black. They should have a shiny copper color. So I'm going to grab a dry cotton bud and simply wipe all the graphite deposits off the collector. And there we go, we are done. I'll also wipe the ends of the armature shaft and check the teeth, so there's nothing stuck in them and they're still in good shape. Next step. So then I need to take care of removing old oil deposits from various surfaces inside the motor housing. So I just use a dry cotton bud for that. I don't really like using spirits or cleaning fluids unless I really have to. Everything's still moving freely, so if I don't need to do it, I won't. I'll also clean the screw hole for the holding plate I removed earlier, and then I'll be ready to take care of the motor armature plate. And the armature cover plate must be quite filthy if we consider the state of the brushes I pulled off earlier. And indeed, it is absolutely filthy and full of graphite and oil, I think. So it's just a matter of using a dry cotton bud again. It's a plastic armature plate, so I don't put anything on those, and I'll just proceed changing the cotton bud when it gets dirty, and I'll carry on as long as the cotton buds come back dirty. And after 3 or 4 of them, I was finally in a place where I could think about reassembling the motor bogie. So now that we've completed the cleaning, let's put everything back together. So I'll start by putting a bit of grease on each end of the motor armature. That will avoid the squeaking noises that can happen from time to time, and also that means that I won't need to use any oil, which has a tendency to get to places it shouldn't get to. So now that this is done, I can reinsert the motor armature in the motor housing. So, giving the wheels a bit of a spin to check everything's moving freely, then it's just a matter of reinserting the windings and then put the motor plate back on. I'll check again that everything's moving freely. That's okay. So we're ready to reinsert the screws. We'll take care of the motor brushes in a minute. Once we are done, I'm going to turn the bogie over. And since I have easy access, I'm going to check the traction tires are okay. I'll apply a bit of pressure with a pair of tweezers to each traction tire, and if the tire turns around the wheel, it means that it's lost its tension and needs replacing, and in this case I will need to replace all 4 tires. So I'll start by removing them. They're in a little groove that's dug in the wheel for that purpose. So it's just a matter of grabbing each tire with the tweezers and pulling them out. At the same time, it's a good idea to check the grooves for the tires, and if they look like they are dirty, then wipe them off or clean them to ensure that the new tires get enough grip around the wheel. So in this case I simply haven't done it. I usually do it, whatever the state of the tire. So I grab some new tires, their reference number Märklin 7153 if you're interested. And to install them, it's very easy. We simply push a bit of the tire with the thumb into the groove, and with a pair of tweezers we then slide the end of the tweezers between the metal of the wheel and the tire, and the tire will simply naturally fall into its groove the right way round. There we go. All pretty simple. It's a good idea to make sure that we're not reinstalling the old ones in the process. Right, I'll just do a tension check again. Yes, now I've got grip, so I should have nice traction on the track. So I can now put everything back together. I'll start by reattaching the motor bogie to the chassis. So I need to drop the motor bogie into the hole at the front of the chassis, of course. Then grab the little plate I took off earlier and clean it. Then reattach it with the screw, and then reattach the bogie dummy and the coupling. Then I'll grab the filthy motor brushes I took off earlier, clean them and reinsert them in their holding holes on the motor plate, and I'll give the wheels a quick spin to make sure that the motor is still moving freely. And it is turning freely. Brilliant. So I can now reattach the little light bulb. It looks like I've dropped an apron as well. I'll reattach it a bit later. So the light bulb base simply clips into the chassis. There we go. And I just need to reattach the little blinding cap which directs the light from the light bulb into the little plastic pieces that conduct the light through the body. I don't know what it's called in English. Sorry. Right, then I can reattach the apron, which also is a simple plastic clip-on piece. And before doing anything else, I'm going to do a little function test to make sure that everything is in order at this stage. So we're moving to the track. I'll rail the locomotive and nothing is working, and that's probably because I'm in the stopping section of my signal, which is set to red. Let's move the locomotive backwards. Yeah, that's fine. So I'll simply put the signal to green and the reverser is working. We're going forward, jerking a bit forward, but I've not put any oil or anything in the engine, so for now I think we are okay. Yeah, that's better. Right, time for a bit of lubrication. So back to the bench. I'll grab my little syringe and I'll apply a tiny drop of oil to each axle at the point where it meets its bearing. On this model I can do that on each behind each wheel, because I've got enough clearance for the syringe, and I'll also apply one tiny drop of oil to each gear in the process. Then I'll move to the front of the locomotive, to the other bogie, and I'll apply a drop of oil to each axle there too. That's it, we're done. So I've noticed a few marks on the pickup shoe, so I'm simply giving it a quick wipe and we'll be ready to put the body back on, I think. And once the body is back on, we'll be ready to move to the track for the usual next step, which is a run-in. So I will put the locomotive back on the track. I'm going to let it run for 10 minutes in each direction at moderate speed. This will allow the fluids to reach the places they're meant to get to in order to do their job properly. And I'll also be able to check that the locomotive is behaving itself, as I might have forgotten one or the other thing during the maintenance. But in this case, once the running was over, the locomotive behaved properly. So I was ready to finally have a bit of fun with these coaches I've had in the collection for ages. So I've put together a consist with a few 4161 version 1 and 2 cars and a 4156, and we're going to watch the train going round the layout. And as we can see, the locomotive is powerful enough for the number of coaches. I think I could double them quite easily with no issue. It's behaving itself. We're going to go on the ramp. Effortless, it's keeping its speed and going up very smoothly. Excellent.